Bitcoin is something that you've been interested in and supportive of. In fact, one can pay for a tour on Virgin Galactic up to the moon with Bitcoin. I think the Winklevoss twins have said that they would do exactly that. You think this is a currency that's really going to work eventually?
Well, I think it is working, and there will be other currencies like it that may be even better. But in the meantime, there's a big industry around Bitcoin, and you know, people have made fortunes out of Bitcoin. Some people have lost money out of Bitcoin.
It's volatile. It's volatile.
Yeah, but it is quite volatile. But you know, when in volatility, people can make money out of volatile situations.
Why was it important for you to give it sort of that stamp of approval, that endorsement, by saying to the Winklevoss twins, yes, you can pay for the ride with Bitcoin?
Because I'm not foolish. I mean, if people have got lots of Bitcoins and they want to go to space, I'd much rather they spent that money on our spaceship. Whether I keep it in Bitcoins is another matter. But I'd much rather they spent that money on a Virgin Galactic spaceship than on, you know, Elon will be sending people to space one day on Elon's spaceship. So we'll grab the money while it's there.
Elon versus Richard. When will people be able to go to space?
Well, it's been tough. Getting the rockets finished has been tougher than we thought. But when we were building two separate rockets, both came good 2 months ago. Since the spaceship is ready, the mothership's ready, the spaceport's ready, now the rockets are finished. We're now, over the next 2 months, we'll start our aerial flights and then our flights into space. So early next year, we'll finally be up and away.
It's exciting stuff.
The need to move money from place to place, the cost of doing so, the overhead, as you put it, makes me think, believe it or not, of Bitcoin, because some people have said, hey, Bitcoin is the answer to those problems. Are you a believer?
Well, Bitcoin is exciting because it shows how cheap it can be. Bitcoin is better than currency in that you don't have to be physically in the same place, and of course for large transactions currency can get pretty inconvenient. The customers we're talking about aren't trying to be anonymous. You know, they're willing to be known. So the Bitcoin technology is key, and you could add to it or you could build a similar technology where there's enough attribution that people feel comfortable. This has nothing to do with terrorism or any type of money laundering.
And have you been betting on any of the ICOs at all?
Sure, we've been betting on lots of ICOs. Again, each ICO is...
Like which one?
Well, so I've got a bet on Wax, which is coming up. It's a token that's going to try to decentralize the marketplace for skins, which are the clothing, shields, swords, helmets that gamers buy to make their avatars look prettier.
Wow. Okay, he's gonna have to explain that in the
Brave
break,
new world.
That was like whoosh over my head.
By the way, I am over 60.
How about this? How about this?
I'm not.
There are more people that buy and sell digital clothing than there are that buy and sell Bitcoin and all the rest of the cryptocurrencies combined.
What?
It's
I read a recent report where millennials, the majority of them, have less than $1,000 in their bank accounts. So how do you change the mind frame here?
Well, let's talk about the problem first. We've got a whole new generation of people graduating from colleges in all kinds of different degrees, or even just high school, not understanding how they're going to set up their financial future for retirement. Because if you think about what you have to do in your early 20s, you've got to put aside 10% of your salary, minimum, every week, and invest it in the market over the long run. Let's say it makes 6 or 7%. So if you start now and you're in your early 20s with your first job, by the time you're 65, and the average salary in America is about $52,000. So if you keep 10% of that and you invest it every month, you'll have about $1.2 million when you retire, which is enough to live off in America. That's the problem.
Okay.
Now, people say, well, I only have $1,000 in my bank account. I only make or have $50 free a week or $20 a week. And Apple, I want to buy a share of Apple. It's $150. I don't have $150 to do that with. That's when it hit me. Why not provide fractional share ownership? In other words, Beanstox is an app. You download it on your phone. Everybody's familiar with their phones, either Android or Apple. And you can put $5 in, $20, $10, whatever you've got, and buy fractional shares of your favorite stocks. And why that's important is you start to learn about investing. Now, it has 1,000 different stocks on it. It's got 200 or 100 different ETFs. You can build an international portfolio. You can actually start to understand how to invest. And, you know, we just brought it out a few weeks ago. There's over 5,000 people have started to work with it. And I talk to them about it. They say the most fascinating thing is I buy a stock, or I buy a basket of stocks, or I buy an ETF. I can't stop looking at my portfolio all day long, watching it go up and down. And that's the whole point of it. Because they're so used to using their phone, it becomes the new interactive.
And is it a younger audience? Are you seeing who's downloading it?
So the demographic's really interesting. What really blew me away is women are far more hip to this problem than men. So we've got a lot of women in their early 20s saying, yeah, I care about investing, and I'm going to start putting aside money from my paycheck. That's number one. Number two is I'm amazed about how interested people are in buying stocks of companies they know and trust. The idea of brand. So Apple's huge, Google's huge, right. Amazon's huge. But they're starting to understand the value of diversification, because when you have one stock, you get a lot of volatility based on that stock price going up and down. But when you have 3 or 5, all of a sudden you start to see, wow, the price isn't changing as much when the market goes up and down. And the concept of diversification and investing starts to permeate the thinking. What I'm learning is our demographics sort of 21 to 38 right now, more than half women, which blows me away. I'm so proud of that, because they actually are smarter about investing than men, who aren't thinking about their futures. But the key is, once you start, it's really hard to stop, because you're saying, gee, this is working for me. I'm actually investing. I can see it work. Beanstox, I think, is going to continue to be a very interesting platform for me to promote, because I want people to have financial literacy.
You know, it's amazing. A lot of my friends are millennials, and they've never cared about investing, but all of a sudden they are crazy about it with Bitcoin, with the cryptocurrencies.
Right.
Hasn't that changed the landscape
Bitcoin to me is not a currency, it's an asset. People debate it all the time,
right.
And I don't know if Bitcoin's the one that survives or some of the other ones happen. The point is, that is interesting, the fact that they would understand I can buy an asset, I can watch its value change, and I can somehow take value and park it in some place where I don't spend it, where I invest it for the future. Because the great thing about, you know, I'm not sure Bitcoins is a great long-term investment because I don't know what's going to happen to it, but I do know a company that makes free cash flow that pays you a dividend every quarter. To me, that is a good idea.
I know you love your dividends.
I love my dividends because my mother used to say to me, never spend the principal, only the interest. So I can invest in an Apple or Microsoft and get paid every 3 months, and I can buy a pair of shoes with that.
Some interesting comments today here at the BitCon about what's happening in China. Of course, we know about the crackdown on initial coin offerings and also the crackdown on exchanges. Now you're saying some CEOs of Chinese Bitcoin companies can't travel. What are you hearing on the ground about the state of disruption right now?
Within China, everything is extremely uncertain. Any officer of any cryptocurrency exchange in China may not leave. Okay, they're not being arrested at the airport, but they've been told privately that they should stay in Beijing. The rest of the world is in chaos, of course, because no one knows what's coming next. I mean, are they going to ban mining? That would be extremely disruptive to the Chinese economy and to the world.
A lot of the Bitcoin mines globally are in China.
Well, the largest is in China, owned by Ji Hongwu. You know, tens of thousands of machines mining 24 hours a day, and those coins are staying in China. So I do not think that will happen. And I truly believe that the Chinese government is a very rational government, and in the long run will come back and legalize ICOs with certain legislative restraints that will legalize exchanges, again, with controls. Because what's happened, people have taken advantage of China. People would come over and do ICOs in China, promising 1,000% return in a week. Okay, oh, please, you can't do that. And so it was making everybody look bad. So I think in the long run, it's very good for the cryptocurrency community.
But do you think there will be too much regulation? Are more governments going to over-regulate and crack down? Because you've heard all the arguments. There's no intrinsic value, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, of course they will. But this will be a seesaw effect. Because when legislation is enacted, people will get around it. We're talking about a decentralized world, a decentralized process where peer-to-peer activity is common. You cannot legislate that. Well, you can, but then how are you going to enforce it? You'd have to have an enforcer in everybody's home. Well, we can't do that. So yes, they will enact legislation. People will get around it. More legislation will be enacted. People will get around it. But in the end, governments will lose because the power of this technology supersedes and is way above the power of centralized government.
Do you see Hong Kong playing a significant role now that China is not necessarily playing in the game at this point? Hong Kong, a lot of cryptocurrency companies have started up here.
Well, here's the problem with Hong Kong. It is still legally part of China, all right? And while China has had difficulty integrating it, if they choose, they could step here and collect me and everybody here. So I think Hong Kong, too close to China. You know, I'm thinking Switzerland, India, the Philippines, you know, reasonable places. The world is a large place.
Bitcoin and things like it is the equivalent of the red pill, okay? We are entering a completely world of uncharted water right now.
Have you made any investments in Bitcoin?
So, I mean, I personally, I own Bitcoin in my hedge fund. I own Bitcoin in my fund. I own Bitcoin in my private account. It is a huge deal. It's a huge, huge, huge deal. Because what you're talking about right now is for the next 3 to 5 years, an unbelievably better store of value. It is gold 2.0.
Bitcoin, there is no Bitcoin company. There is no Bitcoin building. There's not even a Bitcoin server anywhere that you could shut down. It is completely distributed. That's what's unique about Bitcoin. It is, for the first time, a way for the two of us to exchange value online without a third-party intermediary. Until the invention of Bitcoin, for you and me to exchange money online, we had to employ a third party, like PayPal, like Visa, like MasterCard, right? And we live in the 21st century. If we want to have a video call to China, we can do that for free. But to send a couple $100, which is essentially just ones and zeros being moved around, costs 5% plus